This is exactly how I feel like literature should be presented to children. Hi everybody, welcome back to Project Happy Home. For those of you who are new here, I'm Tanya, a doctor lawyer turned homeschooling mom of 3 kids ages 8, 5, and 3. They're all fall babies, so they will be turning 9, 6, and 4 in the fall, and my eldest will be in 3rd grade. We are going to be using Lightning Literature by Hewitt Homeschooling for sort of our spine, in addition to the literature selections from Build Your Library as well as Torchlight. If you want to see more about those curricula, I will be doing dedicated reviews of each, so be sure to check out that. I also have a video on how I am combining the two, so you definitely should go check that out if you're interested in seeing how I plan to do that. In this video, I will be talking about Hewitt Homeschooling's Lightning Literature, and at the end of the video I'll tell you about specifically how I'm going to combine it with Build Your Library and Torchlight. Lightning Literature is a fairly new curricula to me. It comes with a student workbook and a teacher's guide. You can buy it with all the additional books as well. I actually had many of these on my own, and a lot of them actually coincide with Build Your Library's Level 1, which is part of the reason that I am using it. So, as you can see, some of the books include Winnie the Pooh, Rickshaw Girl, Charlotte's Web, The Wheel on the School, The Tale of Despero, Ramona and Her Father, and Sarah Plain and Tall. There's a couple books I actually haven't gotten yet, including The Big Wave, but we will go through all of those in a second. So first off, I'm going to show you the teacher's guide and how it's laid out. So Lightning Literature starts off with a page on how to use the teacher's guide. It's important to note that this curricula doesn't include any picture books. It's actually the first year in their series that doesn't include any picture books, and it also does not include any non-fiction books. The fiction topics it handles can be a little bit heavy. It does include things like death, so be aware of that if your child is a little bit more sensitive. Here it talks about how they do the daily reading. So 4 days each week they assign a certain number of chapters, or in the case of a shorter book, The Big Wave, they assign just pages until the book is completed. And it's designed so that you can read aloud to your students, or the students can read on their own. You can also do a combination, which is probably what we will do. There's also 4 weeks devoted to poetry, and they use the Random House Book of Poetry for Children, which I actually do have. And you can see an example of that and a flip through of that in my Poetry Tea Time video if you're interested. We've been using that book for a while. It's a beautiful collection of poetry, so I can completely understand why they chose it for their curricula. Here you have comprehension questions. Each day of reading includes comprehension questions for the chapters read that day. One of the reasons I was most drawn to Hewitt Homeschooling's text is that they relate their grammar studies and their reading comprehension studies back to the read aloud or reader that they're using at the time. So the questions can be literal or they can be inferential, and I like that as well. It incorporates questions like, do you think this character did the right thing? Or how have you ever felt the way this character is feeling here? Etc. So a little bit more deeper thinking than just the literal questions like, what is the setting of the book? Who is the main character of the book? There's also book discussion. On the day after the last chapter of the book, there is a discussion outlined in this teacher's guide. So it can be between you and a larger group of students, for example, if you do a book club, or it can be just between you and one student. I really like that the teacher's guide addresses how literature can impact people in different ways, how the same story can be viewed by different people in different ways. It says different people will see different things depending on their outlook, experience, personality, etc. Your child will see some unexpected things in some of these books, and what they see may tell you more about them than about the books. It's important to honor personal responses to books. Authors want personal responses from their readers, but it's also important for children to learn how to analyze a story beyond just their own feelings. These discussions are part of that process. This paragraph gave me the exact opposite feeling that I had when I read all the conversation about twaddle in The Good and the Beautiful books. This is exactly how I feel like literature should be presented to children, in a way that, yes, there is a way to write a paper about a theme of a story. There is a way to draw out main points of a story, to draw out the structure of a story, etc. But it is equally true that you will take things from the story that no one else will. that you will bring your own character and experience to a story and a character's journey in a way that no one else will, and that is the magical part about literature. The first aspect covered for every story is theme, and it's abstract, but it goes through different things about story, character, setting, external details, internal details, conflict, and symbolism. So she does go through a lot of aspects of literature and literary analysis, which I like. I think third grade's a good time to start doing that in a more formal way. And there is also reading journal pages in the student workbook. So the child can dictate 4 sentences, 1 sentence summarizing the story, what the story is about, 1 sentence about theme, the message of the story, and 1 sentence about what they think of the story, and also to copy perhaps some of their favorite sentences from the story. There's also grammar and mechanics, including punctuation, capitalization, parts of speech, sentence diagramming, and literary concepts, and that's all lumped under grammar and mechanics. She also recommends that you avoid letter or percentage grades in the workbook pages or any aspect of this class. Show them if they've missed any of the questions and review the missed questions, but use them as tools to reinforce the concepts and check your child's understanding rather than as a judgment on their performance. So I really like the attitude towards literature and literature studies that this author brings. There is also sentence diagramming in the book, and it goes through how to do that and the importance of that. It goes through composition and the different composition assignments in this book. Some of them take 1 week, but some of them span 2 to 4 weeks, so the student has a little bit more time to do it. Some of the composition assignments include creative writing, essays of all sorts, descriptive personal opinion, research papers, poems, etc. And really, it emphasizes that you should make this a pleasurable experience for your student and not a judgy one. Here you have a composition book section, so they would need lined composition pages, and they do provide some pages that you can copy here. If you don't have any lined pages of your own, it shows you seating position and a little handwriting guide there, but I think a regular composition book is really all that's required. You can tailor this course to your needs, and they address it completely. So they say the following portions are optional beyond literature, grammar, and mechanics, and composition. There's reading journal pages, which are included in the student book, dictionary pages, where they ask the students to put 5 to 10 words in their dictionary pages at the back of the student workbook. And then there's also sentence puzzles and extra diagramming, poet biographies, and ways to extend the lesson. So all of that is included here, and that's like history, art, literature. Week 1 at a glance lists the book for the week, optional materials, what grammar and mechanics will be covered, and what composition assignment is there. The book for the week is Sarah Plain and Tall, which is the winner of the Newbery Medal. I love this book. I recommend it to you and its sequel, whether you use this curricula or not. Here it talks about how it'll go through nouns and adjectives, sentences and subjects, sentence diagramming, and the composition piece will be a description of a place. So week 1 covers chapters 1 through 6 of this book, just to let you know. Day 1 tells you a little summary of what's going on, so just in case you haven't had a chance to read it or your child has read it themselves, that's fine. It specifically says if your child wants to read the entire book at once, that's fine. Although they've broken it down into days, it's really up to you how you do it. It gives you a list of questions to ask your child, and it also says the answers here in parentheses. So for example, if you had a busy week and you didn't have a chance to read that week's selection or something like that, they have covered you here. Here you have grammar and mechanics. It talks about what grammar and mechanics will be covered, and it also gives you the answers to the workbook pages. Next, it details the composition assignment for the week. This week and next, students will write a description of a place, and it tells you the purposes of that assignment. It tells you what they should do today. The students should brainstorm ideas about various places to write about. So that's all of it for the first day. Day 2, you read chapters 2 and 3. You have your questions again. And then you have grammar and mechanics, the answers, and then you have the composition assignment. Today the student needs to go to whatever place they plan to describe. And if it's a faraway place, maybe you could go on the internet or in a book. Here you have day 3, read chapters 4 and 5, ask the following questions. And again, you have the answers in parentheses. Grammar and mechanics, the answers right there, and then the composition. Again, the student needs to go to whatever place they plan to describe. They should bring with them the list of nouns they wrote yesterday. Today's note-taking focus is adjectives. For each noun listed, they should write between 1 and 3 adjectives describing the noun. So the composition assignments are broken down in a very nice stepwise fashion. Nothing too overwhelming, like write an essay today. Day 4, you have chapter 6 and the same exact order of operations. The literature, the grammar and mechanics, the answers, the composition assignment. And day 5, it says, is a free day to use however you choose. Finish any unfinished work from the week, review, explore some of the ideas, or simply take a day off of language arts. You have an area to extend the lesson, learn more about the Plains area of the United States, learn more about Maine, particularly its coast, or visit a working farm or living history museum of prairie life. I really like this. I like that it gives you a little bit of organization for that. I plan to look ahead every month and just sort of see what extending the lesson includes and write that into my planner. And, you know, if I find any good documentaries or YouTube videos or field trips, it's a nice little directive without being too forceful. And then the book marches on like that. So you have week 2 again. You're still reading Sarah Plain and Tall. Week 3, you've moved on to Rickshaw Girl. And that covers, I believe, another 2 weeks. Week 5, you're at Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. You guys, I don't know what I've done with my Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. It's missing. But I have to unearth it before we get to week 5, apparently. And that goes on for a while. And you get to week 10 and it's a poetry week. So I want to show you how a poetry week is structured. You have here, the book for the week is the Random House Book of Poetry for Children by Jack Berlutsky and Arnold Lobel. And that's the poetry book every single time you have a poetry week. It lists out various poems, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different poems, and there's optional materials or more poems in the book. Grammar and mechanics includes meaning in poetry and poetry terms, and the composition is to rewrite a poem in prose. Rather than having optional grammar on day 3, the grammar pages for the first 3 days are required, but on day 4, rather than reading the poems a 4th time or having grammar workbook pages, they combine the items into a brief biography of a poet read during the week. So for example, if you look at day 4 of the grammar page for this week, you find a biography of Christina Rossetti because they've read poems of Christina Rossetti on days 1 through 3. The child can choose one poem or a different poem to memorize this week, and once they've chosen one, you work together on memorizing the first quarter of the poem on day 1. For each poem, they list out some questions for you to ask, and again, they include the answers. So some of them are definition words, like what does blunder mean? What does girth mean? They also ask, are there any other words in the poem that you don't understand? Later, there's just questions about facts, like what are the bears about to do in Grandpa Bear's Lullaby? What time of year is it in this poem for Dust of Snow? In grammar and mechanics, they have, again, basic poetry terms. So they have definitions to them and they have the answers here. For composition, the child will choose one of this week's poems, or if they prefer a different poem, and rewrite it in their own words in prose. Today, the only assignment is to choose which poem. Week 11 moves on to Ramona and Her Father, another great book. And the composition assignment is to do a paper on a family member, which I think is nice. But you can see the formatting remains the same all the way through. The student workbook is really nice. It is much more colorful than the teacher guide, which I like. And it also affords a student a lot of space. So you can see here in the table of contents, Sarah Plain and Tall is done for 2 weeks. Then you have Rickshaw Girl for 2 weeks. Rickshaw Girl is a reader in Torchlight level 1, so we'll be coinciding that reading with weeks 3 and 4. Then you have Charlie and the Chocolate Factory for 5 weeks and a poetry week. You have Ramona and Her Father for 4 and a poetry week. The Big Wave for 1. Charlotte's Web for, I believe, 5 weeks. And then a poetry week. You have Wheel on the School, which is a book I actually haven't heard of, but I fortunately did have from one of my thrift store hauls. So I'm excited to read this. This also won the Newbery. And the pictures are by Maurice Sendak, which I love because I love Maurice Sendak. He wrote very famously Where the Wild Things Are, but he also wrote several other books and illustrated beautiful, beautiful children's stories. Then you have a week of poetry, and you have 6 weeks on the Tale of Despereaux. So Sarah, Plain and Tall, has just one sheet for day 1. And right here, it's very simple. It's just organizing people, places, and things. Day 2 is about adjectives, and it goes on for 2 pages. I like how there's very little writing to do in these workbook pages. I like how the workbook pages test for understanding rather than beating them over the head with a million sentences to do. As you can see, it's very colorful. You have explanation intertwined with the exercises. I like how it doesn't overload the students. This is an example of the journaling, the reading journaling pages where, you know, what the story's about, the message of the story, what I think of the story, my favorite sentence. I think it's a nice way to have like an introduction to what a book report might look like. They also have an art day page here. So here's a pattern, an Alpana pattern for you to color if you would like to, or you could make up your own design. I really like that the author of this curricula emphasizes freedom in literature and freedom in English a lot. Like, do what works for you that also expresses your creativity here in response to this book. This is about common nouns and proper nouns here. Here you have concrete and abstract nouns, and you're moving on. But I hope you can tell that the amount of writing in the worksheet pages is very minimal. I like that the font is very clear and large and easy to see. I like that there's different photographs and drawings to hold their interest. And then to give you an example of the dictionary pages, they are very simple, and they have started them for the students with 1 word on each page that comes from the stories. And some of the stories include, as I mentioned, Rickshaw Girl, Charlotte's Web, The Wheel in the School, Ramona and Her Father, Sarah Plain and Tall, and The Tale of Despereaux. Actually, I don't think it includes Winnie the Pooh. I'm not sure exactly how it ended up in this pile, but Winnie the Pooh is included in my other literature curricula, so we will be reading it this year. So you guys, I hope you enjoyed this little look into Lightning Literature for grade 3. I have really high hopes for it. I like everything I've seen, and I'm excited to use it with my son next year. If you have any other questions, let me know in the comments down below, and I will answer them to the best of my ability. If any of you have experience with Lightning Literature, I would love to know about your experience in the comments. And as always, you guys, I wish you the very best of luck in the coming year, and thank you so much for giving me your time and watching. I appreciate all your support, and if you haven't subscribed yet, definitely subscribe down below, and check me out on Instagram as well. I post a lot of shorter videos there and just short clips about other books we're using, for example, for copy work, etc. Things that I don't think merit an entire YouTube video. I also just share pictures of my kids and what we're doing and all the craziness that's going on. So look me up at Project Happy Home on Instagram, and I hope to see you there too. Have a great day, you guys.